Hey Natali, how are you? Ciao. Hey Warren, already here. Great to see you. Let me get you in. Ciao Andrea. Warren,
Hey,
nice to see you.
good to see you too.
How?
How are you, my friend?
Very good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm going to try and get the same aspect ratio as you, so I'm not like the massive
It's
talking
weird
head.
because you're so accustomed to the YouTube aspect ratio that now Instagram is so weird. It's like a square.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
So good to see you. How's the actually pandemic doing with your workflow right now? Are you still going to the studio? Are you operating from your house?
Well, sort of both. This I'm at the studio. This used to be my house. I actually got another house,
Mhm.
so we're just using the studio part of it. Yeah, my it hasn't changed a huge amount for us. I think for guys like you and I, we work either alone or with an assistant or an engineer
Exactly.
anyway.
Mhm.
So Eric and I don't think we took any time off. We took some time off during the Christmas break for the first time in a few years because we're able to. But typically, it's just been almost business as normal. I think you probably are going to say exactly. We're both saying the same thing. It's the touring. Our friends that were surviving in touring. They've been the ones that've been
That's
hit the worst.
the biggest problem. Yeah.
Yeah.
Also going through the pandemic for me was also like almost like a wake up call, especially regarding socials, YouTube, and everything. Like I really took a step on. Before I was more like just a normal producer doing my own stuff, and was like a big push for me to venture into this world where you are like the king. Like since like 5 6 years, I would say.
Yeah, it's been 5 or 6 years. Yeah, I mean, I've been doing it for a while. I thought I did it out of a necessity,
Mhm.
because I wanted to connect different
Wait.
people.
So I don't want to cut you off, but I want to just like, why don't we do like a very quick, because there's so many steps in your life, and I love so much that I can return the favor of interviewing you. And for one time, I'm the guy interviewing someone, and you are finally the one getting like interviewed. So, steps of your career. I remember guitar player, engineer, producer, and then now educator to a YouTuber. So why don't we quickly go through all that, starting from England?
Yeah, I was born in England. Probably,
Mm-hmm.
hopefully, guys and girls can realize that. I hope I still sound relatively English despite living
Totally.
here for a while. But yes, born in England. I was born in a little village called Crookham Village. The nearest town is Fleet, and then Fleet had this music store called Kingfisher, and then about 5 or 10 miles away was another great music store, Anderton's. So I grew up surrounded by these incredible music stores.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I used to go into the music stores when I was a little kid before I even started playing guitar, especially Kingfisher, and Queen would always shop there, and they were my favorite band. So I remember once going in. I can't remember how old I was, super young, and there was a Telecaster on the wall, and it had a sticker, and it said "Sold Queen Productions."
Whoa.
And that it was on a Saturday because it was obviously a day off from school, and that Thursday on Top of the Pops, Queen played on Top of the Pops, and Brian May was playing Crazy Little Thing Called Love, playing that Telecaster. And I'm a little
Wow.
kid. I'm a little kid thinking, "This is cool." You know, it was super super cool. So, yeah, that's sort of my earliest memories is just sort of being surrounded by stuff like that. I was a huge music fan because of my father predominantly. My father had a massive collection of records, but it was probably like you growing up in Italy. It was more like I was surrounded more traditional, so classical
Yeah.
music.
Folk. Yeah.
Yeah,
Classical music. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, classical music. Yeah, some English folk stuff, and then jazz. But the best jazz, it was like Joe Pass, Ella Fitzgerald, and as you probably know, Django Reinhardt was huge in the UK growing up.
Yeah.
So I grew up on Stephen Capelli, Django, Joe Pass with Ella Fitzgerald singing, MJQ, and a crap ton of classical. And my father, he just played music all day and every day. So, and he loved like he was a classical fanatic, so it wasn't just all the obvious, like the Beethovens and the Mozarts and the Handels. He played all that stuff, and Elgar, obviously being English, is huge in the UK. But ultimately, it was, you know, I grew up listening to Khatchurian and you know, stuff like that, and a lot of like Russian composers, a lot of like more left of set stuff that's, you know, definitely popular, but yeah, it was amazing. And then, you know, he took us to Covent Garden, so I went and saw opera and ballet, and so I grew up. It's interesting because I don't do that with my kids, and I keep thinking to myself, God, you know, nobody. I don't know if people do that anymore. You know, whether they bring their children up on classical music. You know, because for us now, the classical music is kind of the rock from the 60s and the 70s, isn't it? But you know,
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, probably.
So what about guitar? So when did you get your first guitar? Anderton or?
No, neither actually.
Yeah.
So what happened is when I was 7, my dad bought me A Night at the Opera for Christmas, and we didn't have any pop records in the house, but he bought that because Bohemian Rhapsody was #1. So he bought the album and he gave it to me, and he gave me this album and said, "This is worthy. Like, it's okay to listen to this." So I remember for the longest period of time, I would just listen to like the album, you know, staring at all the photos of the band and thinking about, wow, who are these long-haired guys, you know? And it was pretty crazy. And so I just was a musical fanatic. I have hundreds and hundreds of albums, hundreds, and a massive album collection. And then I decided I wanted to play guitar when I was 15. So a little late, you know, most of my friends were already playing. So my dad built my first guitar, you know, like Brian May. And he was working in London at this company called IPC doing illustrations for their magazines because he was a painter, he was an artist. And he was doing these illustrations for them. And one day, I think he was walking probably to the tube to come home. And he looked down an alleyway and he saw, like in the back of a skip, a big block of wood sticking out. So he went down there, and it was a chopping board from a Chinese restaurant. And it was the biggest, heaviest piece of rosewood or mahogany. I can't remember now, but it weighed an absolute ton. And he brought it back, and then he shaped the body out of that. And he carved the top and everything.
And that was your first guitar?
That was my first guitar, yeah. Yeah. So I learned to play guitar on a guitar that my father built. I didn't have a guitar before that. So pretty
Were you ever like a session musician in England, like a guitar player, or you started like as an engineer?
No, I was a guitar player. So I had record deals over there. So so I played guitar, although my biggest success in a band in the mid-90s was playing bass.
Oh, wow.
Because I think at that point in the mid-90s, nobody wanted shredders or really great musicianship. They just wanted like dumb play the songs. And so one day somebody said to me, "Can you play bass?" And I was like, "Sure, I'll play bass." So I borrowed a bass. It was my friend's RD Artist, which he had got from Phil Lynott from Thin Lizzy. It was a black one with a mirror scratch plate. So I borrowed his bass. So it's kind of cool, you know, turning up with Phil Lynott's bass. And I auditioned and I got the gig. And so I played bass in a band, and we had a top 40 single. And then we came to America to record. I was also playing guitar, obviously, on the recordings, but live I played bass. And we came over here and made a record over here with Don Smith. Made a record with Don Smith. And then I'd always had studios. I was working, you know, I would have studios in my house. And so over here, I got an apartment, and I bought some ADATs and a Soundtrax Topaz, for anybody who remembers that console.
Yeah, I remember it.
Yeah, and started recording demos with local bands and artists here, and the rest is history.
And so what about transition in America? I mean,
well, that was here. So
that was already here. Okay,
yeah,
great.
So we came here to do the
what
album.
about moving from just an engineer and then a producing record, actually?
Well, the thing is like I was always producing. So what was happening, you know, artists would come in, as you know, and you would produce the artist, and people would hire me to produce as well as engineer, but they weren't on bigger records.
Yeah.
So I'd even recorded demos that ended up being
Yeah.
singles in England. But when I came over here, it was like starting again. So I do demos, and and basically what happened is I just I ended up I ended up getting signed to a producer management company. It was Sandy Robertson's, and you know, they were getting me work here and there, sporadic stuff. And then Dave Sardi said that he needed a Pro Tools engineer. So I started working with him as a Pro Tools engineer. But at the same time, I was starting to develop artists for a label, Epic. And so there was this one band called Future Leaders of the World. I don't know if you remember them.
No,
so,
I don't.
And I developed them and got them signed with one of the A&R guys. And so I had this sort of two things going on at once. I was starting to get records as a producer, you know, and just starting with labels, just at the early stage. And at the same time, I was getting gigs like editing and engineering with people. So it was kind of a combo platter, and I had to pick and choose. It was tough at first.
Yeah.
It was tough. It took a lot of juggling for the first couple of years. But then the Frey record came up, and I just had to choose. I just had to do the Frey record, you know.
Such a great record, by the way. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. And so the first two albums that I did, they particularly the second one, which is like a labor of love, because they didn't really have any songs.
Yeah.
They came in and like worked on the songs in the studio, kind of true old school, you know.
Yeah.
But so essentially that was kind of my upbringing, you know. It was like in America was just rolling up your sleeves and doing what you could.
By the way, that's crazy, because it reminds me, especially the first 5 years I was here, you know, you have to restart from beginning, you know, when you Americans, they don't care, you know. I mean, it's such a different country and such a great, you know, music tradition, that you come from Europe, especially from Southern Europe, where I was coming from, and they don't even know what were you doing. You could have like done like 50,000 platinum records, and they don't even know, you know. They you know, so it's just a restart. So what about the last?
I do think it's so. Just on that point, though, I do think it's changed, and I do think it's got better, because, you know, I was just talking to an artist in Australia, producer and artist in Australia, and, you know, he was after some advice, and I said, well, go to Spotify, go to the top 50. Good luck, I'm like, if you listen to the top 50 on Spotify, maybe half of it's in English.
It's weird.
Totally changed.
You know, it's changed, especially up until 5-6 years ago. Now what I see, it's like, actually it's going back to local. So it's weird. Like Southern Europe, Italy, it was all, you know, like the top 20 in Spotify was like 50-60% was American. Now it's like 90% Italian. You know, like it's almost like if they're floating between being totally globalized, you know, these charts, and then suddenly, like if you take a look at the Japanese, you know, Spotify, it's all about Japanese artists, you know, but that market has always been like that, you know, like
there's reasons though. Japan is very difficult. It's very difficult to get in Japan. They make it very, very difficult. It's never been a real proper free trade between Japan and the rest of the world. I do know somebody that operates a label in Japan, and I believe he told me he is the only American operating a label inside of Japan. It's very difficult to do that. So, but that's a whole other discussion. But I think what's happened was there used to be a gulf. There used to be a difference between music back in the 70s and 80s. There used to be a difference in the music between Britain, America, and the rest of the world. It was dominated by Britain and America. I mean, there was a point in the 80s where like over 40% of all music that was consumed in the world came from Britain. It was even dominating America. But then what happened is, you know, everything, globalization, the economy, you know, people are starting to realize that there's talent everywhere. You know, and I think especially some of the music I love and I grew up on owes such a nod to that. I mean, like, you know, growing up in my age group, I think you and I are similar age, we're Generation Xers, and the thing about being Generation X is we're sort of stuck between the baby boomers and the millennials. They're all sort of screaming at each other, and we sort of love it all. You see, I love 60s and 70s music. You know, my heyday may have been the 80s and the 90s growing up.
Me too, but I love Pink Floyd, you know.
Exactly. I love Pink Floyd. So I don't really have a horse in the race when I'm watching you know, these videos. What was the big video the other day about the laptop production and celebrity? It's like it's too get off my lawn. You know what I mean? You know, it's like it's always been that way. It's always like when I listen to music, especially when I started to get into bands of the 80s, my dad was like, "What are you doing?" He was like, and now that stuff is considered to be classic.
Yeah.
But at the time, to my dad's classical jazzy ears, he thought I was selling out. You know, it's like, yeah. So for me, you know, getting back to the point, I think that what happens is like, especially the British punk and new wave bands started going, you know, we listen to European music. You know, they started, you know, you started seeing interviews with Joy Division and New Order talking about Neu! And all the krautrock bands and about how Kraftwerk, and even Kraftwerk had some success. And I think that, you know, it's sort of opened up. I mean, Italy was famous for prog rock. I mean, had,
or for Italo disco then later, you know,
yeah. So I think that, and now you see, we live in a world where access is so easy. It's easy to copy things now. So you're continually looking for ways to be different. Yeah. And so when people come to me and they've got an accent when they sing, they're all like, "Oh, I want to sound English or American." I'm like, "No, I don't want you to sound like, I want you to sound like where you're from now, because that makes you different." Yeah. You know?
So, you know, last step is educator and creating, produce like a pro, and then like doing what you're doing basically. So how did you come to this? You know, and I love, by the way, just by going to produce like a pro, I love what you're saying on the website. So that was born to help people make great music in any way that you could, you know, in the past. So you wanted to demystify the recording process and show that there really isn't no difference between professionals and home record. I love that. You know, was that
it's kind of true now, because you know, you got the sort of like the grumpier guys, and the problem is for them is like they're not embracing some of the modern technology. So now you have like kids that can run circles around. You know, it's painful sometimes. I'm working with somebody and I'm watching them like move the mouse and like editing
or with
something.
the little desk on the right and still the board on the left.
Yeah, it's like, dude, come on. It's like, you know, you've got to learn your craft. And kids now are growing up with so much skill set. Somebody mentioned PFM. That was exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah.
PFM were amazing.
Great band. Yeah.
Yeah, really great band. Yeah, because I grew up, like, my favorite bands as a kid, because Queen was my first band. So you could go, the thing about Queen, especially mid-70s Queen, is it's like a gateway drug. You can either go full prog, because you listen to Bohemian Rhapsody and Prophet's Song. So I totally got into Genesis and Crimson and Yes and, you know, and Caravan and Camel and PFM, you know, and then I got into some of the weirder Germans like Can.
Yeah,
you know,
oh wow, Can.
Yeah.
They were great. Can.
Great, yeah. And then that German stuff, they got me into Neu!, you know, and so you're like soaking up all these multinational bands, all these incredible bands. But then, of course, Queen was also the gateway drug to get into rock. Yeah. So I also got into, I get into prog, and then I get into like more rock bands. That's great. I could waffle on for hours.
I know.
Talking
so
about
let's
music.
go back about Produce Like a Pro. Like what's the main, how the course is structured? There's many, I think.
Yeah, there's many. So so Produce Like a Pro is definitely about community. So people come in from all over the world. It's insane how much of a melting pot it is of people from all over the world. It's incredible, and we have a lot of Italians in there as well. So, and what they do is like we all have access to the same multi-tracks, so people download the multi-tracks. Then we do mixed critiques and we listen to them and talk about them. But it's a bit more than just that, because it's not just me doing it, it's the whole community getting in there. We don't gamify, there's no competition, it's all about helping each other, you know. And it's pretty powerful. You'll get people coming in who are just like plugging in a virtual keyboard instrument for the first time in their life, and then, you know, and then it's, you know, and then they're just running away with it and becoming absolutely insanely good at their jobs.
Can you give us some numbers? So like, are we talking about now hundreds or probably thousands of people now? Like
thousands of people, yeah.
Yeah, wow, that's incredible. And I want to ask you one more thing about Produce Like a Pro.
Andrew Wallen says the Produce Like a Pro Academy is a truly fantastic community.
That's
Thank
great.
you, Adam. Sorry.
And I'm asking to the people to put the questions in the appropriate section. So then at the end we're gonna have like a few questions for you. And how much do you think is important the marketing you are doing on YouTube for Produce Like a Pro? So content marketing, all those wonderful interviews. You're like, it's like they're really chained together. Or
yeah, I try to let everything live as its own entity.
Mm-hmm.
We do some cross promotional stuff,
Mm-hmm.
but I think I had a period where I used to go, hey, come and check us out and Produce Like a Pro. And then sometimes I didn't, I forget.
Yeah.
I just feel like it's, you know, because I'm bombarded by marketing stuff about 500 times a day, you know what I mean? So you know, I try to make sure that we're always giving incredible value. I mean, one of the things that you learn in digital marketing is you have to give away, you know, like 90% of the knowledge. You can't just be all about, you know, I'm not going to say who it is, but the other day I clicked on somebody's link and I went to it and they were saying they were going to give you a free mastering course. And when I went to the free mastering course, it was just them selling the course trying to sell the course they're about to do with no real information in it. So I'm always a little worried about that. With the guys that work for me, I'm always like, you know, we give away at least a multi-track a week.
Mm-hmm.
You know, every few weeks we're doing full-blown free mixing stuff. Like when we went into the pandemic, we gave away 5 courses for free.
Wow.
Like 5 full-blown courses. You know, other people were doing like little leader things. Watch this interview here.
And then it cuts.
But you can't actually comment on it here. You have to join our community to even leave a comment. It's like it's tacky. It's tacky. To me, it's like, I think when you're doing these kind of things, for anybody watching this who wants to do this kind of stuff, when you're doing these kind of things, you've got to make it for yourself. Like, what do you want? Exactly. What I want is to be in a place. Would you ever
watch it? Would you ever enjoy it? Like, is it something you could take like a value out of or not? Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, exactly. It's all just about how can you? It's all about helping each other. Because look, I'm a healthy, you know, normal kind of guy and stuff. But when I was a kid, I was so unbelievably weird and shy because all I cared about was music, you know? I used to walk around. My granddad gave me, because we didn't have much money, my family. My dad was a painter, an artist, but my granddad gave me his old, like, 60s, like, radio with the one earbud. So I used to have the one earbud in, walking around school, you know, listening to AM radio. And that was it. I just listened to music all day, every day. There was no, you know, I was just a weird kid that was into music and art and architecture. I always tell this story. So for people that are from the academy, so there's a lot of academy members here. Hi. You know, I tell this story all the time. There was a TV show in the 70s when I was a little kid called The Oneidian Line, and it was about tall ships.
Okay.
You know, going across, you know, from Britain to America and all over the world. And the music was by Kachachurian. And so I was 11, and the teacher put on the record and played the music in the room for all of the students in music and said, can anybody tell me what this is? So every hand, of course, goes up because this was a TV show that everybody watched. Yeah. Huge. So every hand goes up and she points at somebody random and says, little Johnny, you know, what is it? And little Johnny says, oh, it's the Oneidian Line, miss. So all the hands go down except for me. And she's like, yes, Warren? I'm like, oh, it's Spartacus by Kachachurian. He was a Russian composer during the, you know. So, you know what I mean? I was that kid. And so I created Produce Like a Pro Academy to be for guys like you and I to hang out in.
Exactly.
And to just be a nerd. And
talking about nerd, you are in a studio. Why don't you give us a super small studio tour? Show us something.
All right. Well, I suppose what you can see, that's a YouTube award just for viewers. Then that's a Aerosmith gold disc or platinum disc, I can't remember. That's the #1's album for the Fray. I'm trying to go down.
Great.
Then there's the Focal speakers, the Trio 11s. I really
That we like
those.
even more.
Yeah, Focal are great. Yeah, I'm just going down. Genelex 1032s. I have had those my whole life.
Yeah.
At the moment, I'm using like a flip out between the Eves or the Callies.
Okay.
These are pretty special though.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a Tech Award for Education.
That's great.
I have an SSL console here.
The good old. Yeah.
Yeah. Guitar amps over here.
What's the flavor of the month?
I'm usually on the JMP Marshall down the bottom.
Not bad.
But it's pretty dark in here and the lights are pointing the other way.
But I can see it. Yeah, I can see it. Yeah.
But down there is the Tone Master.
Mm-hmm.
So this is really going to annoy people. That is the virtual version of the Fender Deluxe Reverb.
Oh, it's the new one. Yeah, yeah.
It's amazing.
I know. Everyone is telling me that it's amazing. But obviously, if you get a purist in front of you, say, oh, that's the virtual one. It's never going to... I mean, it probably sounds better.
It sounds amazing.
I mean, listen, it's all about these new incredible ratios that Gibson... Yeah. And I have a plenty here, like Master Build, Stratocaster. They are great. And they sound great. And they don't break like a vintage guitar. So what's the point,
Yeah. Yep, and then I still have a tape machine. That's an A80, Studer A80. Over here I know it's dark, but that's the Peter Hook bass.
Oh wow!
Yeah, the Peter Hook bass. So it's the one they just reissued, or the Signature Series one. Then I've got I've always loved Yamaha basses. They're my favorite basses.
Me too. Yeah.
Yeah, the BB series are phenomenal. The thing is, when you're a kid and you go to a music store, you had Fender Precisions and Yamaha were the only affordable options. And you always plugged them in, and they always were set up better, played better, sounded better, were active. Yeah. Then I got it's like a weirdly painted Gibson EBO bass.
Yep.
It's painted like the full guitar. The obligatory Fender Strat.
Yeah.
A Jaguar.
Yeah.
And then I've got the 6-string Peter Hook bass. So this is the 6-string Peter Hook, which is made by Eastwood Guitars.
Eastwood Guitar, yes.
Yeah, yeah. Is it Eastwood or Eastman? It's Eastwood, isn't it?
I think there's both an Eastwood and an Eastman. There's both.
Yeah. It's Eastwood, isn't it? I think so. Yeah, Eastwood. But anyway, it's the Hooky bass. You can look it up, Hooky 6-string bass. And then I've got a Yamaha LL16. Yamaha acoustics have always been my go-to. I do have, and then I've got a Revstar, which is another Yamaha. I've got a lot of guitars.
Wow. Is there like a specific, we are all surrounded by outboard gear and Pultecs, and I know that you have some. And is there still a piece of vintage or modern outboard gear that you can't wait to get, or you are like drooling to get, or something?
Oh, to get?
Yeah. Ooh. Like something like for me, like Magic Death Eye stereo. The stereo version of the Magic Death Eye. It's hard to get one. The waiting list is long. And that's one piece of gear that I would get.
Yeah, I mean, I've had so many things now.
Me too.
I got Pultecs, I've got a U47, I've got all of those C12s, I've got all of those kind of fancy things that we grew up. Sorry, the phone.
Oh wait, I can't hear you anymore. Okay, I hear you. Yeah, no worries.
Yeah, the phone just gave me a little. Yeah. So I've got a lot of those kind of things. That's a tough one. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what's left. I've had tape machines. I mean, the Studer A80 is the one I always wanted. Ooh, that's a tough one.
Maybe, what about an original? I mean, I got Fairchild too, but the analog, the guy, that analog tube that's redoing the Fairchild, in England. Maybe an original Fairchild. I don't know. What? I don't know. What?
I don't know. It's a tough one. Now now I'm thinking, I still like amps. I still like guitar amps. Even though all the virtual ones are starting to sound so amazing. I think what's happening for me is I'm sort of collecting things that I always wanted outside of recording. Like I just bought a Guild Starfire 3 with 1963 with the last one of the last ones they made with the original diamond pickups on it. And I just bought that from a company called Retro Fret, for anybody who's interested, out in Brooklyn, who are amazing. I got the owner on the phone. He was really, really helpful.
Yeah.
And so what happened is I had that guitar when I was a teenager. It was one of the first real guitars I bought, but I sold it stupidly because I didn't have any money and I needed to sell it. So I've been looking for years for the exact guitar, because it has to be with the diamond pickups, because there's something special about the way they sound. And I could never find one. I found one with the humbuckers. The weird thing is the humbuckers they made on the later models are probably better than the diamond. They're probably more professional, but there's something about the diamond that's special. So eventually I found it. So it's stuff like that. I want to get a Laney 70 watt. I do have a Laney, but it's the reissue. I want to get an original one. It's more about like the things that I always wanted when I was a kid.
That's exactly what happened to me. Exactly the same. Like the keyboard is, the modular or the polyphonic analog synthesizer I never got when I was a kid. The OBX more than now the new Prophet 5. Yeah.
So did you call Junkie XL and make an offer for his stuff?
Did you see how? I mean, he was surrounded by gear, and now he's selling everything on Reverb. It's crazy. The only problem, I mean, some of the gear is selling, and I understand, and it is over evaluated. I mean, it's overpriced, like he's selling something that should be 200 and he's selling for 400. But I understand. I would do the same probably, because he made such a lot of great records with those, so I would never get something. But he's selling everything. Can you? I mean, it's such a liberating, feeling. I did that, when I moved to America. I still have my studio in Milan, but I sold a lot of stuff because I was not there anymore. So there was no point into owning 350 units worth of rec gear, outdoor gear there. So, and I remember the feeling. It's great. You feel, because once you learn the art of making records, you don't need anything to make records. You just need your knowledge and you're constantly learning. But in 30 years, you'll learn such, like a huge amount of stuff that you can basically make every pre sound good, every compressor sound good, because you know how it works. Plugins are great, so you can basically work with a laptop, like we were saying. So I remember selling, and I bet that he's in the same position. He's feeling free, selling all of that stuff, all the modular, and maybe doing everything inside a super powerful new Mac Pro, or something like that. It's a new point of view. It's a new perspective. It will probably give him more, passion, energy, which is everything. Like we said, passion is the center of, if we make this, it's just for the passion, not for the money. Money comes later if, they can't. And so it's crazy. So
I also think he's probably going to raise an extra $500,000 he didn't have, and have a nice one.
So he can finally build the garage on the side of his home.
Well, he has 2 studios. He has another studio on the same street, just a couple of doors down, a couple of houses down. No, he's got it figured out.
For sure.
Yeah.
Well, like my last question for today, and then I would gladly read a few questions, is what do you think about actual top 20 music in general? Like, do you have
I listen to stuff all the time because I want to know what's going on. I've always liked music that's, challenging. So even when the charts were full of songs which were closer maybe to the music I grew up in, it was really the best of the best that I wanted to hear. It's like, the thing is, I feel like I love just the best of the best. So if something comes out and it's really groundbreaking, then I'm going to absolutely love it, no matter what genre it is.
What's the latest groundbreaking record you heard, in the last 5 years? Or a few?
A few. Well, I think I'm sort of in this place. I just had this discussion this morning where I feel like I'm in this minority, and maybe it's our age group being Generation Xers and not being baby boomers. But I actually like some of these younger bands revisiting the past. Like, everybody wants to hate on Greta Van Fleet. All the baby boomers hate on it. I actually think, well, what do you want them to sound like? You know what I mean? I like some of those younger bands doing it. I don't have a problem. It's like, it's really weird that people get so upset about it. It's because I'm in the music industry. If somebody comes and does something like amazing and it happens to love, Tame Impala is another one.
Yeah, Tame Impala is great.
Yeah. It's like there's bands that have a nod to the past, but are doing something modern. Tame Impala is a great example. There's a lot of really great bands. It really is just being able to open yourself up. And then, of course, the occasional pop song that's just amazing. I don't know. I worry about where we're at the music industry at the moment, because I do know that we're very dominated by very opposing opinions.
Yeah.
And it's a little exhausting, listening to two big distinct groups fighting each other about music all the time. Because music is supposed to be rebellion. Music is supposed to challenge you.
Challenge.
And your parents aren't supposed to like it,
Yeah.
So with the parents all complaining about modern music, it's like they're starting to sound a little bit like in England, we're like, get off my lawn, get off my lawn. Arr, you kids, you don't know what you're doing. It's a little embarrassing.
Let's start with the questions. So, Johnine, in an era where budgets are shrinking, how would you invest in treating a room?
Good question. Depends on the room, doesn't it? Really. I mean, there's no real answer to that. I'm going to quickly say the amp's called the Deluxe Reverb amp, and it's the Tone Master. That really depends on the room. Because if it's really, really bad, then then it might be a lot of investment, and it depends on your budget and the room. Essentially, doing dumb things like we always did, like put the couch in the room behind the listening position, sometimes flying a cloud over the seating position.
That's what I'm doing, actually.
Yeah, and that focuses where you're sitting. I don't need it because this room's very heavily treated. Yeah. It's hard to see, but there's. Can you see that? Can you see that's an angle?
Yeah, I see it. Yeah.
So that's actually an angle. So that's like this.
Yeah.
So there's bass traps all the way around.
Yeah.
And then it's a room within a room, so it's soundproofed. It just doesn't really show on camera, but yeah, it's quite well treated. But if it's really, really bad and you're just getting started, buy a pair of headphones. Simple as that.
Exactly. That's the fastest way to get a mixing. Yeah. So, Warren, do you use old, cheap, low-end gear? Do you still use it? Do you have some?
I use everything, yeah. One of my main guitars is still the, I love tracking with it, is my Pacifica. And I think it was $299. So it really depends. It's like, there's, I've had this conversation many times, because like the AKG D19 is the AKG's version of the SM57. And Jeff Emmerich used to leave it plugged in and just kind of move it around because it was a very reliable mic, just like an SM57, to record different things. But now it's like, because it was used by the Beatles, it's considered to be like this greatest mic ever made. And it's a good mic, and I like it, but it's still just an SM57.
Yeah.
It's obviously worth a lot of money now because, where is mine?
Where is mine?
Talking about it, yeah. Hey guys, where's my D19?
Got stolen.
Well,
stolen.
There's been a few things. Oh, here it is. Got it. Yeah, I mean it's a fun mic and everything. Yeah. It's got it in the case. But it was never an expensive mic. But now, of course, because of the Beatles book, it's become this incredibly valuable thing. So my point is like, you can record albums with a 57, no problem.
Yeah. And
make it sound great, And,
Manuel,
I know you're Italian, but you need a cricket ball wherever you are.
Yeah, that's great. Cricket ball, always. Manuel Mison is asking, would you say that the mixing engineer job has a fair amount of philosophy behind it? And I would say psychology also, not only philosophy you need.
Like, amount of psychology behind it?
I mean, he's asking for philosophy, so probably to be a philosopher, but also to be a psychologist, probably.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough one. I think it's a combination of having the technical abilities, having great technical abilities, but also being able to interpret what an artist wants, and it's therein really lies the kind of secret. You know, it's like you've got to definitely have some psychology in there, because I've done stuff where I've made something sound quote unquote better, but they don't really want it necessarily to be better. They want it to be more of what it is. So sometimes something's recorded badly to one person's ears, but that might be an artistic decision.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes it's counterproductive, but sometimes it's actually quite smart what they're doing. They're trying to make it feel, more live, more natural, and we sit there perfecting it. So there's a lot more to mixing than just to the technical side. I mean, the problem with the technical side is it's easy to teach. It's easy to say boost 60 hertz on a kick and duck, some low mids about 350 and boost 2.5 or 7K, depending on whether you want it to be more metal or more classic rock. I mean, that's how you make a kick drum sound like a kick drum. It's the reality is like it's knowing when to do all of those things. Yeah. You learn all the technical things, but then you have to decide when is applicable,
That's why it's very laughable when, especially in the past, people were secretive about their mixing, and everything. And, there's nothing to be secretive about that you can share. And we are all sharing our presets, our, workflow and everything, because then it's about, your heart, what you're feeling, the knowledge about using those tricks whenever they need it, so why, there's no. So I would say last one, Warren, thank you for doing this. If you were to start your mixing career now, what would you do now? I wouldn't do it.
Yeah. Would I do it again?
No, it's more probably what would you do? Like, how would you start? How would you start getting probably clients? How would you settle in a professional environment, especially in something where, like in a city like LA, where it's very competitive, I would say.
Yeah, I that's a really good question. I mean, I still would start with production because you have to create relationships. And the thing about being a mixer is there's a logical step. A lot of guys people that never quite broke into being producers end up as mixers because they're engineers, and they may not necessarily have the personality to be a producer, because producers have to be champions. They have to be like, that's great, let's do it again, but try that. They have to keep the session moving. They have to have good relationships with people, and that's definitely that's not an easy skill for a lot of people, especially if they're very into the technical side. So, but if you are engineering and producing stuff, even on a local level, you will build relationships with people, and that's how you get clients. Now, don't get me wrong, you can build mixing careers. I've had people come into our academy that have become mixers, but you still got to reach out and build relationships. So it's that's a tough one. That's a tough one. You just need to get yourself out there. You need to get yourself out there. You need to email people, message them. We have somebody in our academy that's working with an artist from England, and they're in New Jersey, I believe. Blanking, but they're working with them they're working with them in England, and they DM'd them on Instagram and said, I'd love to mix one of your tracks.
That's what I'm telling everyone, like, people use the power of social media at your advantage. Nowadays I'm actually DMing people from everywhere sometimes because I like their music, I like how they're singing. And what happened, like two months ago, we just made a song together, and it was featured on 2 Spotify editorial playlists without paying a dime, just by pitching the song on Spotify for artists. So that's what happens. Like, it's use your new digital social media world at your advantage.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Where's your studio?
So my studio now, it's basically my house, because both me, Dave, we all got rid of Fat Factory. Remember? I don't know, bro. You're not updated, because we were scared about pandemic, and then we were feeling comfortable, so we all got rid of it. And Dave moved to a nice house in Woodland Hills. He built his studio inside, and for now, I just look. Let me give you my studio tour.
So wait, there's Fab Factory still there?
See, I think it's still there, but I think it's almost closed. Because So look, this is my guest room, and now it became basically. So what I'm doing is still waiting for the pandemic to settle a little bit, and then like probably building my own studio. Because let's say we go through another pandemic, you don't want to have four different studios, one bathroom only, 30, 40 people coming in every day, checking in the studio, like you don't want to risk your life while you're making the passion of you're making music. So
Right.
I,
Yeah, I thought that Fab Factory was built around Dave. I thought that was like kind of Dave. He kind of got them to do it because it.
For sure, but he didn't feel so comfortable, So I mean, I think he still has his setup right there, but he's operating from Woodland Hills now, from his place. So that's it, And we never know. Maybe we're all gonna reconnect together in a future place. The only thing I know for sure that if I build a place, it has to be like yours. It's yours. It's not like a multi-room, because you are as powerful as the weakest link in your place. So if you have like 40 people coming in for a session in the midnight, and no one is wearing masks, that's what was happening, I got uncomfortable, because seeing people in a closed environment with one bathroom with, not respecting.
Who else? Who else was there? There was somebody else there as well.
Yeah, Jason is still there. Jason LaRocca.
He's still there.
Jason LaRocca is still there. And I mean, and he was the only one for a long time because we all got out of it, So, I mean, it was basically operating like from a private studio because it was the only place. I think now they got a couple more people, but I'm not ready, I'm not ready to go back to a public, to a space that's shared with other people right now, And because I'm Italian, I had so many friends, getting, COVID-19 and seeing like people, even younger people, getting in trouble in the hospital. So, and I have a kid, you know how it is. I don't want to be in a. And by the way, I'm also like loving the space. I have a pool in front of me. I live on Mulholland. It's not a bad area to be like.
Oh, wait there. Where do you live? Because I live just.
I'm Mulholland and Beverly Glen, but I'm on Stone Canyon on the valley side. But at the really end, so I'm on a cul-de-sac. I see Mulholland, but there's no connection to it. So it's fantastic because
Yeah, I live in Royal Hills, so we're about half a mile away from each other.
Yeah. There's a lot of people right in the music business right here. Yeah. It's fantastic.
And I live really close to you. Sometimes I drive into work on Mulholland, so I probably drive past your house every day.
Sometimes. Warren,
if you see an English guy in a little
exactly,
Jaguar, wave at me. I'll put the hood down tomorrow and wave.
I'm gonna be in a small 500 Fiat.
Fiat.
No, but can you picture like the Italian guy on a Fiat?
Yeah, but I'm like a stereotype. I drive a Jag.
You are actually, but I mean, a Jag is much better than driving a Fiat, so it's a good stereotype.
Yeah, but you could have a Ferrari.
Yeah,
come on, you're Italian.
I could,
or a Lamborghini.
I totally could. Actually, you know what? That's fun. That's fun. You're saying Lamborghini. They asked me to curate their Spotify playlist, and I mean, nice. I ask in exchange for just a Lamborghini car.
Nice.
Okay, Warren.
All right.
Nice, really nice. Like
fantastic.
Like 50 minutes. It was great. Loved it.
Somebody did ask me about audience. They said, Warren, from some of your videos, I noticed you have an audience capture card. What do you make of it? Yeah, I have. We use the. Which model is it? We use it every day. It's ID44. We have an ID44. We use it every day. That's another thing. You were asking about cheaper gear.
Yeah.
I use a lot of cheaper gear deliberately because the people I'm teaching, that's what they can. Excuse me. That's what they can afford. Yeah. So we use a lot of Lewitt microphones, Mojaves, like lots of companies that build products that are high quality at lower prices. We use Audient. Because the thing is, if I'm going to do these demos and people are going to download the multi-tracks, I want to make sure that, they're comparable and they're actually teaching, because if I go and record everything on a U47 and a Neve and you know what I mean? It's not really helping anybody, is it? It's like,
no.
So
you're still, dividing yourself from, you're actually, I got this fantastic C12 or Elam 251 and you will never be able to achieve the same sound. When actually in reality, I mean, with a lot of knowledge is so much more important than the gear you're using.
I agree.
Wonderful
talking to you. Thanks for. I'll do this anytime. These are great.
I'll save it so you can, if you want, you can share it because it's so cool to see you on the other side for one time. So like it's great.
No, I really appreciate it. Yeah, save it so I can share it. That'd be amazing.
For sure.
And thanks all the Academy members I see here. It's great. Great. Thank you ever so much, my friend. I appreciate this.
I'll put all your details when I share, you know, the video, so people gonna have like the link to the Academy.
All right, Michele, I really appreciate it.
Bye, Warren.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye. Thank
Thanks
you. Bye bye. Bye bye. Bye
Bye-bye.
bye. Ragazzi, switching back to Italian a little bit. Ringraziamo Warren per l'incredibile tempo che ci ha dedicato, 50 minuti, e per un sacco di consigli che ci ha dato. E la salvo e magari la metto anche come post, così la potete rivedere tutti. Ragazzi, per adesso ci vediamo, il nostro appuntamento è a domani con Canova Speed Date su Twitch, e giovedì con Canova Ascolta, e poi ci sarà probabilmente un'altra sorpresa venerdì, o ci sarà il Q&A con Pinaxa o ci sarà un'intervista con un artista di Canova Record. Ciao ragazzi, a presto, ciao!